Today, we're going to be finding out what makes the malls in Mexico vastly superior to the malls in the United States, finding out why Paul Blart is holding a Draco, and trying to understand why this Michael Jordan hat has a visible crease in his bottom. The mall scene in Mexico is alive and well, unlike in the United States, where unfortunately many people in the US are shopping on Amazon and doing the Fenty fold, which as I understand it is a new dance move that I have no intention of learning. However, in Mexico you can find literally all of the same brand names that are available in the United States, plus a few that are not available in the US due to, well, bad luck I guess. Mall food is very different also, but there are lots of Chinese restaurants similar to the US, pizza places, and even a Carl's Jr. or two, or hundreds. But there are no Taco Bells. So I have no idea where I can get any Mexican food. But for my American compatriots that enjoy McDonald's, there are some of those here, but not nearly as many. In San Miguel, there is actually only one. But as it turns out, Mexicans might like McDonald's just as much as Americans, because this McDonald's maintains a constant line that stretches out the door. But the best thing about dining in an outdoor mall in Mexico is that you might get a little visitor, in the form of a stray dog. These dogs are genuinely nothing to be afraid of. They just want to be pet and also maybe a little bit of your food. But they're not aggressive, they're actually very chill. So just pet them and be cool. One thing you could find at a mall here that is in almost any gas station in the US is ices and slushy machines. You could find them in most movie theaters, and sometimes there will be a dedicated kiosk in a mall. It's different, but same. A few other things that are different is that there are still some stores here that closed down in the US a long time ago, such as Sears and Toys R Us. But the US still has lots of stores that have closed down. They just stayed closed down though, as can be seen in the large boarded up section of the malls that still exist. Now don't get me wrong, there are lots of malls in the US that are still hanging in there, and others that are even thriving, but not like in Mexico. In Mexico, there are more malls in the city of Monterrey than I have ever seen in any town in the US. Some other things that are different in Mexican malls is there are certified Mac stores, and there are some not so certified Mac stores. Check out that Apple logo, and I think you get what I mean. However, just like in the US, there are guys standing with Drake. These guys are actually paid security. Think Paul Blart mixed with Rambo. Outside of the malls, there are lots of cab drivers that almost always drive green cabs instead of yellow. But sometimes they don't drive green cars. Sometimes they drive tuk-tuks. And for the record, I want one of these vehicles so bad. To me, they just look like pure fun mixed with a little bit of danger. Maybe a lot of danger. However, there are still some drawbacks to the malls in Mexico. For example, some things are actually more expensive, and that's no joke. I was surprised at some of the prices. I thought everything would be cheaper in Mexico, and many things are less expensive, but not everything. However, unlike in the United States, they have knockoff products readily available almost anywhere you look. Randomly, at a mall in San Miguel de Allende, I found some very convincing Coach bags. And in the US, these sort of products would have the feds breaking down the doors. Arrests would be made, and heads would roll. However, in Mexico, it's just par for the course. In addition, there are some knockoff products in Mexico that are so far off from the original, they might actually be safe from copyright infringement. For example, this Jordan hat seems legit at first, but, and maybe it's just me, but I think there's a little bit more booty crevice on this silhouette than what I'm used to. I mean, isn't he supposed to be wearing basketball shorts? It could be just a slight flaw in the stitching. I'm not quite sure. In addition, there are often grocery stores in malls, and they're a little different too. For example, there are no cartoon characters on the cereal boxes. There's no Tony the Tigers, the Flintstones are nowhere to be found, and Toucan Sam is completely missing aside from just his beak and a few feathers. Also, the cereals may or may not contain the same food dyes you've been poisoned by, which therefore I'm told makes them not taste as good. But to be honest, it's all the same to me. But let me know about your recent mall experiences in 2026. And since you made it this far, please like the video, subscribe. Until next time.